stores. So I'm a registered dietitian, and what we did in the stores was and some of our dietitians still do, we do in-aisle excursions, we teach classes in the store, we do cooking demos in the store. So that's what I did for the past 4 years at Giant Eagle. I've now moved on to work with our specialty pharmacy area. So I get to counsel patients that are on our specialty medications. So they might have cancer, they might have just had a transplant, or have HIV, or Crohn's disease, or rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, any of those kind of more serious long-term diseases. So that's the area that I'm in now. So that's kind of got linked up with our clubhouse here. But last month we did a recipe and we talked about just kind of getting healthy and getting back into it after the new year. Still thinking health forward right now. We're only in February, so hopefully everybody's still thinking about New Year's resolutions and healthy for 2015. So tonight we took a little bit more of a spin, like Kirsten said, with Valentine's Day. So a little bit of surf and turf with a chocolate dessert, of course. So we're going to do a bistro beef tenderloin tonight and 5 spiced scallops and chocolate truffles. So all of those recipes are in the bags that you just got. In addition, I think there's also a tuna burger recipe in there too. So talking about eating for two, there's a pamphlet in there for eating for two on a budget. There's a lot of great tips in here. When you think about cooking for two, when I worked in the store in the retail setting, I would get these questions all the time. Well, I don't really like to cook for just myself or just for two people. It's really difficult. So this is a really nice brochure that kind of breaks down, if you're shopping through the store, what you can do to save money for just cooking for two and also save calories too. So often what happens is most recipes call for it serving 4 or more people because it's, maybe for a family or a larger crowd. And then we end up eating those extra servings, even though there might not be another extra 2 or 4 people there. So trying to trim back recipes a little bit. So that starts in the grocery store, just shopping for a little bit less. So today when I went shopping for the ingredients and I went to the meat counter, I asked for exactly what I needed to serve the 20 of you or so here tonight. So I got exactly what I needed. They will cut your meat to any amount that you want. So if you just want 4 ounces for each person, just order 8 ounces from them. They'll cut it for you. They'll weigh it for you, make sure it's exactly what you need. Same thing with the scallops tonight. They asked me how many people I was serving, and they helped me out with how much I should get to be able to serve everybody a sampling portion. So use that to your advantage. Sometimes when we just buy the pre-packaged items, we get more than we actually need. So trim it back a little bit, take advantage of the service counter. Same thing with the deli. You end up saving money in the long run, so you don't have those extras that you're throwing away. They get stuffed in the back of the fridge. We forget about them. But if you want to think even more forward with your cooking for two, if you are going to make something that you know can be used again, that's always a good way to save money and save yourself time. So with this recipe, even the bistro beef tenderloin, tonight we're going to eat it just as is, but you could turn that into a salad or a beef sandwich for the next day or for another meal. So thinking about what else you can do with those extra portions instead of just packing them up as leftovers. Same thing with the scallops. You can throw those onto a salad the next day and have a seafood salad there too. So starting to think about that a little bit more. So hopefully the pamphlets in there, tonight's recipes, questions that I answer will help you along with that. So we're going to get started on the beef here just so we can get that in the oven and cooking so it's ready at the end of the demo. And then as that's cooking and we move on, I'm happy to take any questions as we go along. But Wilberg is going to help me out with the beef here. So the first thing we're going to do, the butcher was kind enough to actually already tie this off for me. But we do want to make sure if you do buy it, from the maybe refrigerated section, this tenderloin, if we didn't tie it, whenever it cooks, it's actually going to kind of fall flat. And it won't be that nice tenderloin, and it won't be as nice and moist in the middle. So that's why we tie it, to keep it held together on there. They also trimmed it up really nicely for me too. So take advantage of the butcher. They're wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this. We're going to get that pan nice and hot. We're going to do a quick sear on the beef before we put it in the oven, just to save us some cooking time, and also that nice sear will give it a nice outer crunch. So another thing about the beef tenderloin too, has anybody ever had beef tenderloin, first of all? Okay. So it's a lean cut of meat to begin with, but like I said, it was trimmed a little extra as well. There's a little bit of fat still on it, definitely, but what you can see or not see is there's not a whole lot of marbling. So the whites, the marbling, that's fat. Right, exactly. So there's actually not a whole lot of marbling in this cut at all, which tells you that it's a leaner cut to begin with. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of oil and salt and pepper to that. Nope. The tenderloin is actually kind of, it's near the leg and in that general area, yeah. So where like you would get a sirloin cut from, sirloin's another very, very lean cut of meat. So same region. So pork tenderloin, just as lean.
What's the difference between that and roast beef?
Roast beef is more processed. So typically, unless you're getting it straight from meat counter and doing it yourself, but roast beef in the deli area is going to be a little bit more processed, a little bit more added sodium. Come on in. Okay. So what we're going to do with this is put a little bit, this is a Tuscan herb-infused olive oil. So we're just going to put a little bit of that on our meats, just so we can get the salt and pepper to stick to it. So we're going to rub that in and pat on the salt and pepper. And then we're going to throw it in our pan to give it a nice sear. You have all these recipes in your bags too. Okay, so give it a little massage, kind of work that in there. Get it on both sides too. Kind of spread that around too. You don't want like a big hunk of pepper or salt in one area and none in the others. So got that coated. Our pan nice and hot. We can put a right behind you. What we want to hear means that our pan's nice and hot, so we're just going to let that sit in the pan for just a minute or two and then flip it over to get a sear on the other side. Gives that nice kind of crunch that you get on the outside of a steak. And it also is going to help decrease our cooking time in the oven, which is going to allow for it to stay really moist. So less time in the oven, more moisture. I just wanted to get it a little bit seared on that side too. All right. Now we can put this in the oven. I'm going to grab the oven door for me. Thank you much. Ooh, it might not be high enough. So we're putting it into a 350-degree oven. On the recipe card that you have, it calls for just doing it in the oven at 400. Because we seared it, I dropped the temperature a little bit, and the cooking time is going to be down to about 20, 30 minutes. We're going to check it in a little bit with the meat thermometer. So if you don't have a meat thermometer at home, I highly advise getting one so you know when your meat is cooked correctly to the right temperature. Most of the time when I hear complaints about either chicken or beef being overcooked, it's usually, or not knowing when it's done, because somebody didn't have a meat thermometer. So seems like you could just touch it or cut it open a little bit, but one of these, 10 bucks, insert it. We want it at least 145 degrees to be at that mid-rare. You might go a little bit more cooked just to appease everybody tonight for those that like it a little bit more done. This is a cut of meat that you don't necessarily want it well done, so you don't want to overcook it too long. We're going to keep an eye on it. About 20 minutes, we'll check it again. All right. Yes? You don't trust, right? So to calibrate them too, if you want to make sure and check and see if yours is working right, throw it in a glass of ice water, and if it registers 0, or 30 under 32 degrees, it's freezing. So that's how you can check it, or boiling water. So that's how you can double check it. So if you don't trust it, test it first, and then if usually there's like you can kind of screw this, push this, usually with the end of this, to turn it, to calibrate it to where it should be when it's in ice water. That's all you need to do for that. Yes. It's on 350. We're going to check in about 20 minutes, so it's about 6:30. So if I lose track of time, put you on clock watch. We're going to go ahead and pull that out, and then really important about the beef tenderloin too, when it comes out, we don't want to cut it right away. We're going to let it rest for 10 minutes and let all those juices kind of retract back in. Exactly. Otherwise, it'll be very, very dry. So we're getting our pan cleaned here because we're going to move on to, we're going to get ready for the scallops. We're not going to do those quite yet, a little bit closer. But the other recipe that we have for you is chocolate truffles. So you have that recipe in there as well. So what's nice about these chocolate truffles is they're a lot lower in fat and sugar than a typical chocolate truffle recipe. So instead of using heavy cream or butter, high saturated fats in here, we're actually using a healthier form of fat by using almond butter. So if you're not familiar with almond butter, it's just like peanut butter. This is fresh ground from Market District, so it's literally just almonds. So nothing else is in here. No salt, no sugar added, no oil added, just the almonds. So as natural as you can get. Almost. There's still a little bit left in here. So I tripled the recipe. Oh yeah, you could use this anywhere else you would use peanut butter. The reason I use the almond butter in this recipe is the almond's a little bit more of a mild flavor as opposed to peanut butter. So if you want your truffles to taste like chocolate peanut butter, by all means use peanut butter. The only reason is just a little bit mild. So what we did with the food, taking a basic food processor, we're throwing all these ingredients in there. So we threw in the almond butter, we threw in dates. You could also use figs if you wanted to. This is where your sugar is coming from. It's coming from the dates. So these are already pitted. If you buy ones that still have the pits in, remove them before, otherwise you'll have a little bit more texture in those truffles. So I like the pitted ones. They're much easier to work with. So in the food processor goes the dates, the almond butter, cocoa powder. So that's where we get the chocolate part of it. This is an unsweetened natural cocoa powder. You could use the dark if you wanted to for a richer flavor. And then vanilla extract, and then plain Greek yogurt I used in there as well. That kind of helps get everything to cream up and become nice and soft. And then a little bit of canola oil. So again, that just kind of helps get everything moving along, makes it easier to roll, gives you more of that kind of nice, rich, creamy truffle taste. Come on in.
You want to come around this way? If it's too hard for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So all of that just gets moving in the food processor. Tonight, one of the batches, I did put some raspberry preserves into there as well. So you should get a little bit of that flavor in there. You could use any other type of preserve. On the recipe you have, it says add a dash of cayenne pepper. That just brings out a little bit more of that chocolate flavor. You could add in cinnamon if you want. You could play around with different extracts and do almond extract or peppermint or whatever flavor you want. So the possibilities are endless with that, and then what you roll them in as well. So we rolled them in some coconut, some chopped nuts. We did some dusted cocoa powder. So we have some to finish up, so we can pull that out and work on that while the beef is in. So I think they're in that freezer in there, the truffles. So we just have a little bit of cocoa powder. Like I said, the chopped nuts and coconut to roll into. So we're going to roll some more. So it gets a little messy, and it's best to keep, we threw this in the freezer. This is what it looks like when it's out of the food processor. So nice and smooth, looks just like truffles. Easier to work with when it's cold. So we threw them in the freezer, the refrigerator. You can see what our finished product looks like over here. So had I not told you they were made with dates and almond butter, you might not have guessed that. I thought they were just from the local bakery. So real easy, just roll them in whatever you like. So while we're doing this, I'm going to open it up for questions. So we are talking about cooking for two, but any nutrition questions are welcome. Yes, you can. Just in an airtight container. Trying to see if I, yep, in the refrigerator for up to 5 days in an airtight container. You can freeze them for up to a couple months in the freezer. Yep. So nice little Valentine's Day treat. So anybody who was here last time, we did a chocolate avocado mousse. Did anybody replicate that yet or thinking about replicating it? So that's another one that kind of plays with that cocoa powder and uses that for its richness without having to add a lot of extra sweetener. Rinse between flavors here. Fire some questions at me. Or anything anybody learned from last time they've been practicing? Yes, just like you would with any other cookie or truffle. Yeah, you could do something like that. You would want to make sure they didn't get smushed. So, you know, you would want to, if you put it in a Ziploc bag, make sure it's laid flat and not, you know, pressed up against something else. So that they couldn't sit out for a long time. The Greek yogurt that's in there. Over time, they age well. So you could do that. We're trying to keep it a little lighter, so I didn't do the rum this time around. Right, truffles are a mushroom and they are very expensive, and truffle oil is also very expensive. They have a similar look to them, I guess is probably the biggest reason why they call them that. That's why they're so expensive. It's the wild boar's fault. Okay. No questions tonight. You guys are quiet. So what are the biggest challenges when it comes to cooking in general, whether it's for two or for multiple people? Clean up? We just assign that to somebody else, right? Uh-oh, in trouble. Shopping? So whenever you are shopping, are you using a recipe that you're shopping for? Like, do you have a recipe that's, okay. So some of the tips I talked about, like with the meat counter, that can help so you're not buying too much. So, you know, I have a pretty good idea on how much I need to buy on a regular basis, but tonight I was cooking for 20 people. So our service counters are really great, or any service counter is really great at knowing that. Butchers are fantastic at knowing it. I mean, they handle the meat, they're weighing it constantly, so they know what a portion is and how much is appropriate. So that's a huge help. As far as produce, that one's a little trickier because you have to kind of do a little bit more math when it comes to that. If you're making salads, roughly a serving of leafy greens is 2 cups. So a bag of salad mix has about 4 cups in it, so it's like two large salads out of that bag. So if you kind of start to think that way, it helps you to save money, because that's probably one of the biggest produce items that gets thrown out every week is salad mix. Sure. The bag mix. The bagged ones. Oh, the fresh ones. So, not sure exactly why that would be. I mean, could it... Yeah. So it could be just in how they're raised, how they're farmed, right? But storing things in the right manner too. So whenever it comes to your mixed greens, things like that, they should be, stored in an airtight container, a Ziploc bag. Generally, put a little bit of a paper towel in there to absorb some of the moisture. It helps it last a little bit longer. So storing can help you save money. If you put, I think we talked about this last time with the bananas, anything that you store next to bananas is going to ripen faster. So be careful of that. You don't want to have your avocados next to your bananas if you're not planning on using your avocados in the next couple days. Depending on where they're stored, yes. Mm-hmm. Right. So vegetables, particularly things like bananas, give off a gas that, will affect the ripening of other fruits and vegetables around it. So that's why those should always be stored separate from everything else, unless, you want your avocados are hard when you bring them home and you want them to ripen faster. You could put it next to it. Mm-hmm. Right. A brown paper bag in a warmer place, like on top of your refrigerator, will ripen them faster. So dark, warmer place will ripen faster for things like avocados or pears that often are hard in the grocery store on purpose so that you can get them home and they're not overripe by the next day. So if you're planning for something like that, you might want to shop a little bit in advance so that you aren't throwing items away. Buy them harder if you're using them in 2 to 3 days instead of trying to buy it for a recipe tomorrow and then it's not ripe and you end up not doing that recipe and then you end up throwing them away. So ripening and storing, another big useful tool. So keeping things in your crisper drawer also can help, keeping them in the baggies, in the airtight containers. Wrapping celery actually in foil can keep its crispness longer than if it's just in the bag that you brought it home with, so you can try that out. Some people store it in water. That helps a little bit. With fresh herbs, you can store them in their stems just in a little bit of water covered with a plastic bag just loosely. They'll last for about 5 days in your refrigerator, where you can freeze them. So lots of fruits and vegetables can be frozen too. So that's the other thing. Spinach, if you're going to end up using it in smoothies, freeze it. So if it's starting to get a little bit to the point where maybe you don't want to eat it in a salad, but you'd be okay in a smoothie, or sauteing with veggies, throw it in the freezer. So we buy frozen spinach anyway. So this is just you doing it on your own. Green peppers you can freeze, onions you can freeze butter. So there's all types of foods that you can freeze to help extend that life. If it's already peeled, yes, you could. Not going to last as long and not going to be as juicy, of course, after. So if it's going into a smoothie, not a problem. I'm not sure I would want to eat an orange that was thawed out, though. Just eat it. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. Very high water content, so like I've had cucumbers that I've diced up and got pushed to the back of the refrigerator and got a little too cold, and they become very translucent and they're just not crunchy anymore. So that's not one I would freeze. No. So thinking about what's in your frozen food section helps you with that a little bit too. So if you look at stir-fry mixtures, there's peppers, there's onions, there's carrots in there. All of those can be frozen. So make sure they're washed well and dried well before you put them in a bag. Yes. I would cut them up because trying to cut a frozen onion would be dangerous. Trying to cut anything frozen is dangerous. So pre-dice it, pre-chop it, then freeze it. And that'll help you out with not wasting. But it all starts in the grocery store first, so trying to, really plan. And as you do recipes too, starting to realize how much you have left over. So if every time you make spaghetti, you have leftover spaghetti, start to take note of how much pasta you're putting in that pot. So the next time you can reel it back a little bit. And that'll help you with saving money, time, calories. Because if it's not there, you don't need it. So it's kind of one of the first things I cover with weight loss counseling is cutting back portions. And that starts with the actual meal, what you portion out to prep it, and then what you actually put on your plate. And then if it's just that little bit left over, we're usually inclined just to finish it as opposed to put it in Tupperware or throw it away. So that's where those extra calories creep in. Good. Question? Yes. We sell both GMO and non-GMO items in the store. Yes. So I'd love to say we're GMO free, but we're not. We sell such a variety of products that there are products that have GMOs in it. But GMOs, the ones that are GMO free are labeled, or shopping local, you have a better chance of not having GMOs. And Giant Eagle does carry a lot of local items, especially when they're in season, so in more of the spring, summer months. There's a lot of local items. Even our meat counters, seafood counters, we try to do as much local as possible. So even less farm-raised fish and more grass-fed beef. Genetically modified organisms. So meaning the seeds of a soy plant were genetically modified, so they were reproduced. So one particular seed that grew well was then reproduced and used. Right. Hybrid used for others. So that process continues. So I actually spent a week last summer in Iowa with Monsanto learning about GMOs. So, of course they had their stance on it, so it wasn't completely unbiased, but I did learn a lot about the processing of it. So, there are some positives to it. There's some negatives. It's cost effective, absolutely, and it's energy effective for the earth. So if you're not losing out on, if you're planting the best seed and you're not losing out on that crop or using the materials from the earth to grow a crop that's not a good producer, you save. So, there's benefits and, good and bad to it. So most people find a taste difference. Of course, they're using, certain fertilizers on it, certain pesticides on it. So, it's not considered an organic product because they are using those chemicals on it still. Right. Right. So there's a lot that goes into it. So it's a huge debate that I would love to see an end to because it's very controversial. But there are options available that are GMO free out there. So if that is what you choose to eat and what you prefer, it's available at Giant Eagle. But yes, we do carry some that aren't. Not yet. It's kind of like how gluten-free is now. It's voluntary at this point to be labeled GMO free. Yeah, because it's not 100% mandated and there aren't strict standards for what GMO free stands for. So yes, it's still a little bit controversial. It's just like labeling something natural. Natural does not mean organic. So Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't, yes. So trying to eat as much local, as fresh of food as possible gives you the best chance of knowing what you're eating and where it came from. Right. Absolutely. So other questions?
Okay, miscellaneous for giant eagle.
Check this. Uh-huh.
The one in Green Tree, giant eagle. There's no scooters.
At all?
No, not one.
That is hard to believe. I don't think I've ever been in a giant eagle where there wasn't.
And Robinson has a whole food,
Mm-hmm.
so that's good.
Right.
Frozen one. And then the South Hills Village store, Village Square, that giant eagle village, whatever you call it, giant eagle store. But it's a market.
South Hills Market District?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That one has very little handicap parking. And you can never find a parking spot. You have to walk like 2 miles to get to the store. That throws me off. So Robinson's
Okay. So I'm not sure how much I can do for that, but I can certainly pass your pros and cons.
pros and cons, I guess.
Absolutely. We're going to let that go a little further.
I had a question for her last week. Those racks. I mean, not those racks. So we put the chicken
Last
on.
month we did a baked chicken parmesan, and I cooked it on racks so that the heating process could happen entirely around the chicken instead of that when it's on a tray it gets kind of soggy on the bottom. So Berger asked me where to get those racks, and I said the dollar store for $1. So there, I think you get two for $1 even.
It says Dollar Store.
I think the Dollar Tree is where I got them from.
Dollar Tree.
Mhm.
Okay, because that makes a difference.
Yes.
Let's hold on.
Mhm. Yeah, I hand wash them.
Where to get them? You were wondering.
Yeah, I would hand wash them. I mean, I've had to replace mine, but so they're not the best in the world, but they work, and they're $1. So.
The Dollar Tree.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, no, one unusual dumb question. He always likes baby back ribs.
Okay.
Never cook them or watch them or anything. Can you cook them in a crock pot?
There are recipes out there for the crock pot. My fiance is a huge fan of cooking ribs, so he typically smokes them or does them in the oven, but you can do them in the crock pot. Mm-hmm.
How long? What else? Do you just add barbecue sauce? I don't know the first thing about that.
Yeah, we haven't done them in the crock pot.
They're good at smoky bones.
You're going to want, of course, in a crock pot to have at least a little bit of liquid in there so they don't dry out. So some people who do ribs like to use a little bit of apple cider vinegar or apple cider, apple juice to impart some of that sweetness into it, and that would give it some moisture. Even a little bit of water kind of mixed with that to dilute it a little bit in the bottom, just so they don't stick and burn to the bottom of your crock pot. You might need to replace that water during the process as well because it'll evaporate. But I don't know if you're recipe savvy online, but there are tons of recipes online for crock pot ribs. So you can investigate that one a little bit further. But I'm sorry, I'm not that experienced, and I want to lead you down a wrong path. If anybody else has done them in the crock pot, feel free to share. But yeah, I would probably be kicked out if I tried to do ribs in the crock pot in our house. We'll find a recipe for you. Other questions? We got a little bit more cooking time on the. I'm sorry. Yep, I just checked it. We're not at temp yet, so we're going to let it go another 10 minutes or so and recheck it. Internal temp was only about 80, so we've got some ways to go.
You said about searing that meat. So if you sear your meat,
Mm-hmm.
you should pull back the degrees, like 50.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah, so it's not going to need as high of a temperature because it's already got some basic cooking for the outside. So we want it to cook a little bit lower and slower now. So we don't want that high heat right away. Yeah, so we'll keep it so slowly that internal temperature. I could see it was still a little bit pink, just even on the outside, so I know that it's not completely there yet. But yeah, yep, when I was shopping today, I checked with our chefs. So double checked that one. Yeah, other questions? Yeah. The broiler? There's lots of uses for the broiler. So actually, the scallop recipe that you have in the bag does recommend using the broiler. We're going to do them on the stovetop just so you can all see, and so I have better control because I'm cooking so many of them. But broiling for melting cheese on top of anything, the last couple of minutes of like a lasagna to really kind of get that cheese brown and crusted. If you're toasting bread, that's a real quick way to do it under the broiler. If you're making homemade pizzas, you can throw the crust in there. Like we do flatbread pizzas often, and just get that flatbread real crispy under the broiler, melt that cheese, but everything else might be already cooked on top of it. So yeah, quick high heats to basically more of that browning, that finishing more so. Wings, if you're making your own wings at home, you can broil those. So yeah, high intense heat, short cooking time, keep an eye on it. Anything under the broiler, don't walk away from. Good question. Other questions? Yeah.
About spices.
Yeah.
Other than garlic powder and pepper, that's about my whole array of knowledge of spices.
Okay.
And can you give me a reference that I don't know how you always read recipes, like rosemary paired with this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't know about the rosemary. Well, now I got a can of rosemary.
Okay. So there is a brochure in your bag that talks about a couple of spices, more of kind of your fall, winter spices, and what it gets paired with, what uses it could have. But for things like rosemary, thyme, sage, those are more of your earthy flavors, so they pair nicely with meats or with mushrooms, like portobello mushrooms. You can do them with chicken too. Rosemary chicken's a very popular one as well. So more on your savory side with rosemary, more earthy types of flavors. With things like cilantro, that's much more fresh, or parsley, those are more your fresh, vibrant, bright flavors. So those are usually not cooked. They're usually something you add after. If you're doing like a soup, I have a soup recipe that includes a bunch of different spices, rosemary, thyme, sage, and everything just kind of marries together in it, but it's a chicken noodle soup, so it's still pretty basic. But yeah.
So like for a spice, like I think it's gram masala or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, how does one know what's in that spice? Yeah, I see it in the jar,
Sometimes it will list for you on the jar. We're going to use Chinese 5-spice tonight, actually. So right on the package, it lists what's in here. It's cinnamon, ginger, allspice, anise, and clove. So these are from the bulk section of Market District. But on a jar, typically, depending on what brand you're buying, it will tell you the ingredients. It's just really tiny. So it's often in there, like herb de Provence. All the ingredients are in there. It's pretty basic, alternative to using an Italian seasoning. But Italian seasonings usually basil and oregano, and it's listed on there for you. But yeah, especially the ones that are marketed that are Montreal steak seasoning. That'll definitely have its ingredients listed for you. So McCormick's pretty good about listing that.
And like curry powders, there's the red curry powder and the green curry powder and the yellow curry powder. What's the difference in the curry powders?
Heat, yeah, the heat. Mm-hmm. So not a huge curry person, so I don't know which one's the hottest, but I know that they vary in heat. So that would be the difference. Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, most of them will tell you what's in it, and that can kind of help you out. So the Chinese 5-spice, we're actually using this on the scallops tonight, so sounds kind of odd, but Chinese 5-spice was intended to be made to hit all the different tastes. So sweet, salty, bitter, spicy, all of that. So that's why we have cinnamon. Ginger gives kind of that spice, the allspice, anise, cloves. So we get a little bit of all of those different tastes in there. And scallops are kind of that blank slate, so they're a good protein to use it on. Fish. It's a seafood. Shellfish. Mm-hmm. Has anybody not had scallops before?
Oh, I have. I get sick of them.
Okay, so you won't eat them tonight. You can close your eyes. Okay, so we'll make sure that well, Burger will eat the extras. Don't worry. So scallops, since we're talking about them, we're going to get ready to cook them here in just a few minutes. They're shellfish. They're a little bit lower. Well, they're quite a bit lower in cholesterol than shrimp. So shrimp is a pretty high cholesterol food, even though it's very low fat and low calories. So it's a nice alternative if you have to follow a low cholesterol diet, but you really enjoy shellfish. So it's a good alternative. So we can get that pan nice and hot. Sorry for this super squeaky oven. When we take the temp, we always want to go to the thickest, most middle part of the meat as well. Okay. And the scallops are in the fridge if you want to pull those out. I would prefer to keep it out just because it might pick up the ambient temperature of the oven. It won't be as accurate. I mean, if you have a thermometer that's maybe in your oven to test your temperature, those are made to stand up to that heat. This one I'm not sure. I just picked it up today. We're going to let it go a little bit longer. We're getting there. All right. So the scallops, we're just going to, really, really simple recipe here. We're just going to toss it with some canola oil and a little bit of salt and the Chinese 5-spice. So these have already been cleaned. Another perk of going to the seafood counter, clean them for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So we're just going to do 2 teaspoons of canola oil. So we have a little bit more than a pound, so we're going to do a little bit more than that. And we're going to do 5-spice and salt. We're just doing a tiny little bit of salt here. So still staying on the low sodium side. All right. Has anybody cooked scallops before? So typically in the pan. So the trick to scallops is not overcooking them, right? So we just want to sear them, again, using that searing technique on both sides. So we're just going to let it get not even halfway up on one side as the color changed to more opaque, and then flip them and do the other side. Okay. You guys are really quiet. You can hear the sear. It's to adhere the spice to the scallop better. Yeah. Taste is about the same. You'll just see different sizes. Mm-hmm. Spices smell so good. Hard to tell with the spice on them. And are we going to put them on a platter? What's that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. All a little different size. Make sure they're all good. Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that was on. I'm going to check the internal temperature of the tenderloin. Oh, yeah, you can do this. 120.
120.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need?
I'm going to do 145. Mm-hmm. Almost there. All right. Couple more minutes on the scallops. So, questions? Keep them coming. And this Chinese 5-spice, it is cinnamon, ginger, allspice, anise, and clove.
Are they equal portions, do you think?
Roughly, yeah. So if you have those ingredients at home, or if you like one more than the other, so if you like a little bit more of the anise or the clove, you could bump that up in your own mixture. Absolutely. So a lot of these ingredients you probably have, especially after the baking season just happened. So there you go.
You mentioned that. I wasn't here. You said you used some of the avocado leaves.
Yes.
Is that a Dietitian recipe, or do you have that recipe?
My chef and I created that last year, so I printed it off. So it's not on our website or anything like that. But I believe I sent it to Kirsten, so she should have it, or at least can make a copy of the recipe. So pretty easy: avocado, the cocoa powder, almond milk. I'm sorry?
How thick is it?
It's pretty thick. It was pretty thick, right?
And what do you serve it with?
A little dollop of whipped cream and raspberries.
So it's a dessert.
It is a dessert.
Avocado.
Yes.
Mashed.
Mashed everything went in the food processor. It was delicious. Yeah. It went fast. I don't think there were any leftovers last month. Yes, we used dark cocoa powder. Agave nectar. This time we just did the regular unsweetened cocoa. Last time was the dark, special dark. Yep. Yeah, it was. Yes. I do. And prep lunches and yes. Yes, that is normal for us. We very rarely go out to eat. Weekly. Yeah. When I was on the retail end of it, I was shopping daily because I was there, but now that I'm not in that setting anymore, weekly. Yep. So we blow through produce pretty quickly because I prep everything in advance. So on Sundays, typically, I'll cut up all of my veggies that we do raw veggies with our lunches every week. Sometimes I'll even make my salads in advance for the week, so I'll have 5 containers of salad already pre-mixed in there, and then I'll just add my chopped veggies to it. So it does save us a lot of time and money. So if everything's already pre-cut up, then it's sitting in the back of the fridge, forgetting about it. It's already done, and then it's already in another sealed container or bag, so it lasts a little bit longer too. But cucumber, I always wait to cut those because those get a little bit slimy and their taste changes. Yeah, a week is about max for us on that. So I'll cut up celery. If it's in a Ziploc, we're usually okay. After a week, it'll turn kind of brown on the ends, and then you get rid of it. But
I cut all the leafy greens off. Put them in one of those green vegetable bags. Oh, sweet. I'll get that.
yeah, if I wrap it in foil, like if I remember to do that, it'll last pretty well. But otherwise, it will get kind of like bendy.
And I'll wash it and then I'll dry it off dry. And I'll put it in a Ziploc bag real tight.
Yeah, I usually leave mine whole and I just pull off one and when I need it and rinse it and clean it really well, and then so the rest of it's still intact and that's all wrapped up. And that might help a little bit instead of cutting it all, because then you're exposing it to air when you're cutting it and washing it, and it might start to break down a little bit more during that process.
I turned them off.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're probably good. All right. You can pull those off. We can get the truffles out. We can get plates and stuff together while I take this out and let it rest. Hopefully we're at temp. Looks good. A little under on that side. It's good on that end. Because of the sear, it should have. I think this end was just a lot thicker because this end's good. Yeah, this end's just going to be, is just more on the rare side for sure. It'll come up more as it sits, as it rests, but it's a little too rare right now on that end. Yes. So the side that's a little bit thicker is a little bit under still. Well, the other side's right at temp, so I don't want that to get overcooked, so I'm just going to let it go a little bit longer to get the thicker side closer to temp. I'm sorry? Healthier meaning what? Define healthier. Good for you? Well, are you referring to back when the raw diet was really popular? Yeah. I mean, when you cook proteins to a high temperature, it does denature or break down that protein a little bit, so you lose a little bit of the actual amount of protein, but you're killing bacteria and the spread of that, so it is, you should cook it to at least the proper temperature. As far as overcooking it, I don't think there's benefit to that. Beyond, like this is, we want to be at least 145 internal temp. Cooking it to 200 degrees internal temp, I think would be overcooking it. Yeah, so it would dry it out, it would remove all the juices from it, but there's not going to be any additional health benefit to going over that 145. But we wanted at least to the 145 to make sure, well, that's a medium rare, to make sure that we've killed off any bacteria and nobody's going to get sick, and that's why we cook it to that. I mean, people do eat their meat rare, and that's perfectly fine if you know where your meat's coming from and you're the one in control of it. I get a little bit nervous about rare products in restaurants because of sanitary reasons more so. That's my personal take on it. But as far as your health goes, I mean, you're still going to get the vitamins and the minerals as long as you're not completely overcooking it or completely undercooking it. So sometimes when we cook items, it actually brings out more nutrients, like spinach. We actually get a little bit more iron content when we cook it than when we just eat it raw. Yep. So there are some foods that benefit from cooking. So, but for anybody who has a suppressed immune system, though, I would recommend cooking. Yes. Tomatoes, you get more of the antioxidant lycopene when you cook tomatoes than when you eat them raw, correct? So like canned tomato sauces and pastes and things like that have a higher lycopene value than raw tomatoes. I mean, you still get that benefits, but you get more once it's cooked. Yep, good questions. All right. Okay, so those are off. So the next step, when we take this beef out, we're going to let it rest for a few minutes, but I have all these herbs out here. So that's the part about the bistro beef that makes it a little bit different than just a basic tenderloin, is we're going to coat it with some Dijon mustard and then roll it into herbs. So I have some tarragon, chives, and thyme up here. Any mixture of fresh herbs is fine. So this is where you could use some of that rosemary that you might have. Fresh herbs are a little bit more tender as opposed to, if you've ever tasted dried rosemary on its own, it's kind of like pine needles. So I wouldn't recommend doing dried herbs on this recipe. we're going to use fresh for that. So any mixture that you want, there's a whole bunch of them listed on the recipe. I just chose 3, but we could certainly add parsley in here if we wanted to. Probably not cilantro, just because it kind of doesn't go with the other earthy flavors that we have going on. But we're just going to roll it in that and then slice it. So once it comes out and rests, I'll cut off the twine and roll it in there. But I think we can maybe move everybody to the other area, let them start eating their scallops, and then we'll serve the beef. You can all get cozy out there.